Hello, students. Here we are again, and today we are beginning our notes for the longest topic of the year, Geologic Time. And so let's get into our books onto the page for our lesson notes as we begin Geologic Time. You have just finished watching a video summarizing the history of the Earth in about 5 minutes. I think it's an awesome video, and it took you through a literal whirlwind tour of Earth's history from its beginning origins to the present day. And there's a lot of information jam packed into that 5 minute video. We're not going to explore all of those things this week. I would just like to highlight a few today and tomorrow in our notes before we get to our lab activity later this week. So let's begin by just discussing the geologic time scale briefly. The geologic time scale describes and divides the major events of Earth's history. And what I liken it to is the fact that, well, I'm a parent now, and as a parent, I mark the milestones in my children's lives. Maybe you as a child have had some milestones marked for you. I'm wondering, how many of you have a wall or a door or a chart at home where your parents measure your height every year for your birthday? Do any of you have something like that at home? I know I do. And that's kind of a milestone, how you have grown over the years of your life. How many of you have parents who have collected photo albums of you from the time you were born until the present? Anybody? I know I do. Nowadays, I know photo albums are becoming a thing of the past, perhaps, but maybe some of you have, I don't know, Instagram or Facebook or some social media that, or your parents have some kind of social media where every day or every week reminders come up of things that happened last year or 5 years ago. Have any of you seen those kinds of things? Yeah, they mark milestones perhaps in your life. Well, the Earth itself has had a lot of milestones. And when we talk about the geologic time scale of planet Earth, we're talking about describing and dividing Earth's milestones into measurable units, for lack of a better term, so that scientists, and in particular geologists or biologists as well, can study the major events that have taken place throughout the history of the Earth. Here's another example. Think about your own life from your own perspective. How many of you have ever drawn a timeline of your life? Perhaps all of you in another class. Well, if you were to draw a timeline of your own life this period, you might start off with a, flat line. Actually, on second thought, we usually end our lives with a flat line. But you know what I mean. We're going to start a timeline beginning with when you were born. And you can probably write the day and maybe even the time that your life started here on planet Earth. Now, once you're born, various things happen. There are lots of significant events that your parents would probably mark as milestones in your life. Like the first time you spoke, Your first word, was it mommy or was it daddy? I don't know. Your parents probably know. And maybe they even wrote down the day and the time that that happened. Maybe they have recorded other events of your life, like the first day of school. Do any of you remember your first day of school? Maybe you even have a picture hanging up somewhere in your house, maybe even on the fridge, of your very first day of school every year that you've been in school. Maybe you have a kindergarten first day and a first grade first day, and so on and so on. I know I even have it's called a school days book. I kept all of my school pictures from when I was in kindergarten until I graduated high school. In fact, now as a teacher, I even have all of my teaching pictures of every year I've been teaching. Maybe in class I'll show you some of those pictures. I won't show you on video because some of them are pretty scary, but maybe I'll show you some of those pictures. But the point is, as we live our lives, there are milestones that we like to mark. You're probably looking forward to graduation day, when you graduate school and you can begin your life on your own terms. Once you've done that, the next major event might be the day you get married. For some people, that is the biggest event of your life until you have kids, at which time some folks might wish they were dead. But let's stay positive here. The point is, on a timeline of your life, you may measure things from your birth to your death and major events in between. And that's kind of like the geologic time scale. And so, as we explore the geologic time of planet Earth this week, we're going to start at how we're going to measure that time frame. In your own life, you probably measured it in terms of years, maybe months and days. But when we're talking about the Earth has been around for so long, yes, even longer than me, that we have different names for the types of divisions of time. Now, there are epochs, which are even bigger than these, but we're going to focus this week on eras and periods. We're going to consider this week eras to be the longest division of geologic time that we are going to be discussing, and we'll explore four major eras. You can almost think of these as the four seasons of a year, but we'll be considering the four eras of Earth's history. Now, those eras can be divided into smaller divisions, which we will call periods. Periods are subdivisions of eras. In our calendar context, you might think of them in terms of like months in a year. So, eras, think of them as the seasons of the earth, and periods, think of them as like the months of Earth's history. So, let's begin with the geologic eras. The first one is called the precambrian. The precambrian era, and it has had other names in history as well, but we're going to consider it the precambrian era. Pre means before something, and we'll work on that in a little while. But the Precambrian era is known as the early Earth history. You can think of it as like all of the baby pictures of planet Earth. Not much is happening on Earth in terms of life and organisms and the flourishing of plants and animals and so forth. We'll get to that later on. But it's a long period of time. And as any parent knows, the first year of your child's life seems like it takes forever because you do not get any sleep at all. Maybe some of you have younger brothers or sisters at home. You've got babies at home, and you may know exactly what I'm talking about. That Precambrian era seems to have gone on forever. That brings us to number two, Paleozoic. The prefix paleo means old, and zoic means life. Think of zoic, like in zoos, you see a lot of living things. Paleo is old, zoic is life. So the word Paleozoic literally means old life. And that's exactly what it refers to in Earth history. It's that period of time where there are very old, the remnants or the snapshots, you might say, of very old living things from planet Earth. We'll explore these a little bit later on. The third geologic era is known as the Mesozoic era. Meso means middle. Zoic, again, refers to living things. And so put them together and you've got Mesozoic or middle life. We see a dramatic change in Earth history from very simple organisms to more complex organisms. And we see those things in the fossil record, which we learned about last week when we learned about fossils. That brings us to the fourth era that we currently are living in right now, and it's called the Cenozoic or the Cenozoic era. Ceno means the current time frame, and zoic again refers to life. So Cenozoic refers to current life. Now, there are some scientists and some geologists that have studied Earth history their entire lives, and they have recognized that today it seems as though we are entering a brand new era in geologic time. Some scientists are calling it the Anthrozoic era. Anthro refers to humans, and there are many that believe that we are entering a new era of geologic history where humans are altering the earth so much that we are changing the surface of the earth for future generations, for future species, for future geologic time. We are tearing down mountains and building in ravines, filling in ravines, I should say. We are altering the landscape with mining and so forth, with the development of concrete structures, so that our activities over the last couple hundred years are going to remain a kind of part of the fossil record for future generations. So much so that geologists believe that we should add another era to this geologic time, the Anthrozoic. We're not going to discuss it any further than that right now because we've got enough history to consume ourselves for the duration. So today we're just going to focus on the first one, even though it's the longest era. The fewest number of things happen during the precambrian era. So we'll get this under our belts here today. The precambrian era. Now, for each of these eras, we're going to be giving a range of dates, and I want to show you these numbers here. This little squiggly line here, I don't know if you know what that means or not, but it's a mathematical symbol. And does anybody know what it means, by the way? It means about or approximately. We don't know exactly. We don't have a birth certificate for planet Earth. So any dates about its origins are strictly estimates based on dating that we've done, absolute dating and relative dating of fossils, as we learned about last topic. But we believe, most scientists believe, that the Earth is about 4.6 BYA, billion years ago. The BYA refers to billion years ago, and the MYA refers to million years ago. That's an important distinction to make there, so you might want to jot that down in your notes. But the Precambrian era, an enormous, incomprehensible period of time from over 4.5 billion years ago to a little bit more than a half a billion years ago, 570 million years ago. So that's a big stretch of time. You think about that video that we watched yesterday with the football field, that's like the majority of the football field. All right, let's move on though with some details, some snapshots of major events that took place during the Precambrian era. Most notable, of course, is the formation of our beautiful planet. Although when our Earth was formed, it didn't look quite as beautiful as this. There were no clouds, there were no oceans, the land was not covered with green vegetation. The Earth was a very, very different kind of planet, unrecognizable to what it is today. But some other significant events that happened during the Precambrian era include the formation of the seas and the mountains. Yes, it was during this time period of geologic history that the oceans formed and the mountains swelled up from above the surface of the oceans and went into the skies. So the seas and the mountains formed. Very significant event because it is believed that it was in those oceans that the most simple life forms began to exist. Life began in the sea. I believe just about every scientist on the planet would agree that life began in the sea. And you couldn't have the life on planet Earth if we didn't have oceans. We're exploring Mars, as you know now, but as you also know, there are no oceans that exist on the red planet. But it is believed that oceans once did exist on Mars, which is why many of our Martian rovers are exploring the beds and the deltas in and around ancient Martian lakes, because that's believed to be the most likely location to find evidence of living things elsewhere, because we believe that's how it formed here on planet Earth in the oceans. And it was also during this time that oxygen began to build up in the air. You and I know that we can't live without oxygen. We would suffocate or asphyxiate, as the case might be. But a lot of the oxygen in our atmosphere is there because of the simple organisms in the ocean. In fact, even today, about 50%, half of the oxygen in our atmosphere is a direct result of the microorganisms that live in the oceans. Think about that for a moment. So, our oceans on Earth, pretty darn important. So, it's a notable event during the Precambrian era of Earth's history. So, we're going to end this video here for now. We have a lot more to discuss. For now, I'll say bye bye.